welcome to regular session, Nogales Housing Authority Board of Commissioners meeting, 4 p.m. Wednesday, March 1st, 2023, City Hall Complex. Would you call to order? Would you please rise and for the record? Councilman Diaz, would you take the honors?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call to the public. Director's report. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Robert Thompson from the Housing Authority. I have attached the director's report on the agenda. I hope that commissioners took time to read that, and if so, if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Go ahead, Commissioner Diaz.
Just in regards to the report, we keep seeing that we're not fully filled on our vacancies or vouchers because people are running into issues. Is there anything that can be done to ease the process or expedite it? Because I know you have a bunch of waiting lists, but they still keep growing and we're not filling housing.
Absolutely, Commissioner Diaz. So the issue as it pertains to the Southern Arizona region, as we've been in contact with each other, and this is several PHAs, public housing authorities, the number one factor is lack of rental properties. So what does that mean? There's not enough properties out there to be able to fulfill the voucher needs. So the 170 or 86% on the voucher signifies that there's 170 vouchers in use. It does not mean that we have 20 vouchers, 25 vouchers, 27 vouchers out in the streets looking for housing. Currently, we have 7 that are out, and that moved up a little bit, so I think my number is probably closer to 10. The process is lengthy, unfortunately. The background checks are what pretty much hold us back. We have to query, and you probably know this firsthand, we have to query different databases, primarily law enforcement, to get those background checks on people. Last week on Wednesday, I had the liberty or the ability to monitor and be the receptionist for the day at the Housing Authority. In those 8-hour processes, if I didn't reschedule applicants for a future date, I think I had 7 that we had to reschedule that were scheduled for that day to come in and go through the process. We're seeing that scheduling conflicts also have issues. And if I can elaborate that a little bit more, in order for us to be able to fulfill the, hey, come in, sit down, let's do your interview for the intake process, we have to send out a letter. U.S. mail tends to be a little bit lagging, and we understand that. So the process in place has been, and hopefully will continue to be, is a phone call. Applicant so-and-so, your name is up on the list. I'm going to schedule you for whatever date. We schedule that day. In the meantime, you may receive a letter or you may cross paths before you're scheduled to come forward. So when you get that letter, just file it, right? Because we need to send that. That's one of the requirements. So we're trying to alleviate that process. But again, the background process is extensive. It does take time. And we're searching of the internal PIC system, which is what we use for housing authorities. We're also relying on a third-party vendor for backgrounds, plus the police department for local checks. It's just, it does take about 20 days to be able to get somebody with a voucher if again, they clear all these flags. So it is lagging. I apologize for that.
No, I'm glad you clarified that because it really makes sense. The only other question to follow up on that is, are you getting any resistance from law enforcement with helping with the checks? And I do understand that our housing covers the whole county, not just the city. So would the sheriff's office be able to assist in any way?
So we query both. We haven't had any issues with either or. If we do have something, if we do have a viable candidate that needs a quick check within the city, we pick up the phone, call our girls at records at the PD, and we ask them, see if they can rush it. It doesn't take them a lot longer than within 30 minutes we'll get a response, and we'll go with that, just to streamline the process. But no, we it's just a waiting game, unfortunately, and those are the rules that we need to follow, because we do have to evaluate the program, the Section 8 program, and it does ding us on points if we don't follow through with the process. It's just the way it's been. But yeah, rental properties, if we could build, I'm all for it.
Thank you for your response, Director. That really clears up a lot of my questions. Thank you.
And if we compare last month's report to this, it's attributed to deaths.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
One more follow-up really quick. I also noticed that you put a spot here for evictions.
Aye.
Is that common? And I know it's a hard issue, but I know that some have come up for evictions, and we try everything we can to help them not get evicted. But what's your process for that?
So whenever we identify a tenant that has trouble making those rental payments, those monthly rental payments, we send out the notices and everything. We refer them to social services such as DES ERAP, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. I think the county no longer has their rental assistance program in play. However, we do kind of coach them in that direction so they can apply. And if at some point DES responds saying, yes, we have an application for so-and-so, I immediately stop the process because there still is hope that something would happen in the future. And then this way, the rent will be caught up and future rents will be done, which is why some of these evictions have taken us up to 6 months to do, because we tend to help them out. As we saw in this batch, we had a total of 12, went down to 9. And out of those 9, only 1 was a forced eviction. Everybody else figured out a way to get things going and worked with us, and were able to make those payments. So unfortunately, we did. Out of the 9, we ended up removing 1 on Friday of last week. And by that point, the tenant had already vacated the premises.
I have one question.
Hold on, Mr. Vice Mayor, Commissioner Bojorque was next. Thank you.
Okay. I noticed that you have one port out for the regular vouchers and one port out for the emergency vouchers. Is there any more people applying for port outs?
No.
No?
We have some people, we absorbed 6 port-ins in November, I believe, October, November of last year. So there's more people trying to relocate down here than they are trying to relocate out.
Yeah. Is that, yeah, porting in is better than porting out, though.
Right.
So, okay. And on those people, the 19 looking for vouchers, does that include the emergency also?
No, so emergency voucher it's its own separate little thing. That's a little bit more, it's a lot more streamlined than the HV voucher than your regular Section 8. However, there's a lot of tendencies in landlords not to participate in that particular program. And that's because we're dealing with, and I don't mean this in a bad way or in any way seem like I'm pointing somebody out, but we're dealing with people who are homeless. And there's a stigma behind that, and some of the landlords really don't want to work with us on that, but we do our best to do that. In fact, we lost another EHV applicant or tenant because that person just abandoned ship, left, and we ended up with a broken contract, and now that landlord doesn't want to work with us any further. I mean, we kind of obligated a whole year's of funding and subsidies, and now they got to go their own separate way.
Okay.
Commissioner Bonilla.
Mr. Thompson, what are the consequences of People who are evicted under the housing program, are they not eligible anymore? Is that my understanding?
The current sanction for a lease violation or an eviction in this case is you're no longer allowed to receive benefits from this program nationally up to 3 years. It used to be a lot longer. I'm sure that the current federal administration will probably be a little bit more relaxed on that because of what we're dealing with, right? Lack of housing, lack of everything. The coffers do have some good funding in there set aside for all this, so they may be a little bit more relaxed on that. But for now, it's a 3-year ban, basically, and that's nationwide.
I've been asked by general public, that there's people that have been on the list, and then they tell them, it's not your turn, it's not your turn. What's the follow up with the people on the list? How do you, relate to each individual? Is there a written list at your office that everybody goes by, or is there, a list for one bedrooms, a list for 2 bedrooms, a list for 3 bedrooms, and follow your, get in line? What's the budget?
All those, Mr. Chairman, are exactly correct. So we do run 2 lists, one being the Section 8 list or the HCV list, and that one is geared towards the family or the individual, and that's based on points. So the higher the points, the higher up on the list you are. We are required to purge the list every year in January. How do we purge the list? We send out letters saying, hey, if you're still interested in the program, please respond to this letter by email, phone call, any means of communication, so we keep you on the list. However, when we opened our Section 8 list from October to the end of December, which was last quarter of 2022, we were able to purge, and let me rephrase that, we were able to consume the remaining 23 applicants on that list. So we didn't have to purge for 2023 because it's a brand new list that we got together January 1st. In the meantime, every applicant is responsible to come into the Housing Authority and report any changes, family composition, economics, finances, changes in address, phone numbers, email address, what have you. Because if there's changes in economics, family composition, or if there's a change in a disability issue, that could add or subtract points, which means every 30 days we have to run that list. And if by chance today you're at number 5, the probability of your number moving up or down is high every 30 days because it's a fluid list. So there is, and just for discussion sakes, we're a little bit over 100 people, I think is the last count, in new Section 8 applicants. We're well over 80 well over 60 in the 1-bedroom process applicants, over 30 in 2 bedrooms, and so forth, so forth. So we do have a big demand. People are in the program from beginning to end, and end could be a lease violation, eviction, or death, which is typically the 3.
Okay. Also on your current unit statuses, you have 4 that are vacant, and then you have 4 that looks to me a simple doorknob change order. Would those be available soon?
So the change order has been fulfilled as of today.
Okay.
We do have people ready to go. As soon as we close out this change order, it was $2,300 just to reinstall locks on this during the remod process. Those will be made available. We do have appliances on standby from a local vendor. We need to transport those from the warehouse to the unit and get those offline back online. And we do have people waiting to go. Some may require a refresher on their background, which wouldn't take much, but it's still a process that we need to, because we try to stay ahead, but within 120 days to get people So if a background expires beyond 120 days, we have to do what's called a refresh or an update it to the background. And some of the applicants who are ready to go into these units have lapsed the 120 days, right? We had the change order, we had a couple of issues, so we need to go back, just make sure we freshen things up, and we should be able to house people immediately. On another note, with these offline units, we don't lose subsidies from the federal government if they're undergoing some sort of major turnaround, in this case, remodels. So our cash flow continues the same. The only cash flow we don't see is the rent. So that'll kick in as soon as we get them housed, or rented out, I should say. If we look at the remainder of the, where am I looking at? Units that are pending or in a pending status, I'm still awaiting information from our insurance adjuster to see if they will come up with the monies to correct the mold issues. We will not rent an apartment that has a mold concern. If we do have an apartment that has a mold concern, we will try to remedy that or remediate that as best we can. If not, we will move them around and put that unit offline. Last correspondence I got was last week, trying to get an update as to where we are. The remediation company submitted their findings, and I'm just waiting for the insurance company to see if we can use that cash to do so. Because in our current budget, and as far back as I can see, we don't have any emergency funding set aside. And we can talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the budget, why that came to be and stuff like that. So I'm just, we're trying to get those rented out, but we just won't with a mold issue. And those seem to be the problem. And it's not just the mold, it's a bigger issue with the upstairs bathrooms, leaks and everything. So we should be able to do that. And then we do have some internal transfers. And what does an internal transfer do is we have a family that needs to move from one unit into the other one. Once we move them, we got to put that other unit on turnaround status and go through the process. In at least in some of the previous budgets that I've looked at, we haven't asked or were allocated what's called turnaround funds. This year for 23, I've asked for $25,000 in turnaround funds, which means I can hire a contractor, and within X amount of days, they can paint it, fix it, do whatever it is that we got to do, because my staff isn't, although they're capable of doing it, it's time consuming, and they got other issues they need to tend to, your regular work order. So that's a flaw that I've seen in the budget, and that's a flaw that I'm trying to correct, and hopefully it'll come to be.
I have a question, Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Bonillas.
Right now, when they raised the issue, Mr. Thompson, about the waiting list, one of the things that has always caught my attention is the long waiting list. But in all honesty, these people that start going under the program, the housing program, is there like what are the expectations of these people to stay living there? Is it 5 years, 10 years? Because I imagine you must have families there that have lived there for.
So I have 3 generations currently.
Okay, so that means that the list really doesn't move all that much. Am I correct?
You're absolutely true. So some of these families are in there for life, like I said earlier today, or if there's an eviction or lease violation. They're in there for life. The family self-sufficiency, self-sufficiency, FSS program was devised in the 90s, where a family chose or chooses to be part of a program where they're housed for 5 years. I think it's 5 years. And in those 5 years, a certain amount of their rent is set aside for them to use for a down payment or something for housing outside of the program. For years, we've been trying to fulfill that list, trying to get people on that. But as we all know, 2020 taught us something. That is, if you're housed and if you got a place to live, stay, hunker down. And a lot of these families are reluctant to go into that program because they're afraid of self-sufficiency. And it's kind of saddening to hear that, but we have had, I think, the vice mayor had 3 families that graduated or something to that, and they've been able to purchase their home, so the program works. It's just people are afraid to move into that. It requires a little bit more of that social service need, that little extra push. And as always, within those 5 years, these families can opt to withdraw from the program, but they forfeit all the money. It goes to what we would call back rent. That's the caveat to that. But honestly, if we do have a family who is willing to do this, we would we would want to work with them a lot more. Unfortunately, this year I had to apply for another waiver for dormancy of the program, and that'll be in effect for another 3 years because the demand is really not there. People are just afraid. And I mean, with everything happening, I can't blame them. But
The problem is, most of the people living in public housing have temporary jobs. And
Yes.
when they're off, during the summer, if they work in produce, they don't have a ways to pay for the rent. So they use public housing as a cushion, because if they're not working, their rent goes down, and they can afford it. If you're in the FSS program, you have to comply with the rules and keep paying what you're allowed. So that's what makes it so difficult for these people to go into the FSS program. They don't feel safe. They think if they miss a couple of payments, they're out of the public housing, and they don't have any way to go back unless they go back on the waiting list and start all over from zero. So that's why they kind of get intimidated about that.
there is some change in guidance from HUD in which if a family who pays what we call the flat rent, which is the max allowable for a unit. So if there's a family living in a 3-bedroom apartment and for discussion's sake, the rent there is $800 flat. If this family continues to pay the $800 flat for, I think it's 2 years, maybe 3, I'm trying to recall, then that family is now considered forced removal, basically, because they are self-sufficient, and therefore they should allow for other people who are on these extended waiting lists to be part of the program. So that's something that HUD's been looking at, and I think the decision has come through. I just haven't read up on it to see when it's actually going to start. But we're looking at a forced removal based on a family that can afford the max flat rent up to a certain amount of time. So that may make those lists move a little bit more.
Go ahead.
Robert, have you heard anything about HUD pulling out of the public housing program?
There's been a lot of rumors about that. I know it's a lot easier for HUD to subsidize versus own.
Yes.
So if that is the tread that HUD is going to, I think we need to start thinking about what the future holds and how we, the city, would be consuming those 226 apartments. We're going to become property managers, and we got to figure out a way how we're going to do that and how we're going to continue with a low income rental increase with low income rental revenue without a subsidy from the federal government. That's going to be a hard thing to do.
Unless you put them into the Section 8 program.
Right, and just house everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on director's report? Mr. Dickey, anything to say on directors? Okay. Thank you, Robert. We go to current events, update on 5-year PHA plan.
All right, so again, Commissioner, update on the 5-year plan. I know we received an email about the delinquency of the PHA plan, but it's best to just take a step back and talk about the entire process and what it is that we need to do. So our current PHA plan was devised in 2020 and it expires in 2024. So it's 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 5 years. However, the current PHA plan, the 5-year plan, doesn't seem to marry two things. Number one, it doesn't go smoothly with the general plan of the city, and it really doesn't go smoothly to current events. So what do we need to do? Well, my idea in several conference calls, Mr. Dickey, Mr. Kissinger, and our Tucson field office were engaged in was to redo a new one. However, it's not a one-day turnaround thing. So what is best decided amongst all of us, or between HUD and I, was to continue with the current annual plan as presented back in 2020, but we still have 8 to 9 months to create a brand new 5-year plan, okay? We need to address things that came out from the pandemic. Housing, rental market downfalls, changes in those peaks in rental increases. I mean, rents have increased, astronomically lately. I can tell a story about one of our rental apartments that wanted to raise the rent on elderly up to $212 a month on a fixed income of $600. Section 8 doesn't allow for it. It's huge. We couldn't be able to absorb that. So that would have created people, abandoning ship. So we kind of put a stop to that. But yeah, all these little things is what we need to look at so we can physically create a brand new plan that's going to remedy all these things and potentially set us up for the future. And again, we don't know what the future holds. We weren't expecting a shutdown of the world in 2020. None of us were, but it happened. But now we need to anticipate stuff like that. So the current 2023 PHA plan has been published. It is here at City Hall. It is at Housing Authority. There's an ad in the paper that has been published saying where it's located. We have an email address, phone numbers, what have you, for the community to respond to that plan and give us any input that they think would merit the plan. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, I have to rubber stamp it to be able to continue with the housing program. I'm not a big fan of rubber stamping things because things do change. We do need to modify them. We do need to amend them. So that is the plan. April 5th at 3 o'clock is when we have scheduled the public hearing. I'm hoping that I have people here to make comment on the PHA plan and give us the input and sort of give us that footprint that we need to understand what the needs are outside. So we will have that public hearing meeting. If council or board of commissioners would like a copy of the plan, I'll be more than happy to email that at the conclusion of this or create copies, what have you. Again, this is a rubber stamp. The only change I did to it was create or add the milestones we've had in the last X amount of years, since 2020. 8.5% of our units have been remodeled. It's not a big number, but it's a total of 12, I think. I wrote it down somewhere, I apologize. 17 units, I apologize. 17 units have been in turnaround, which means they're brand new from the inside. We do have some awards or contracts that will be awarded soon, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. And we need to just get the community's input about all these things to include the Board of Commissioners. On the same note, I will be sending out training modules. I know I talked to the chairman a couple of weeks ago about this. This morning I was engaged in one talking about the PHA plan and talking about the CFP plan. It's an hour and 39 minutes, so it is time consuming for everyone in this room. So it's a great tool for us to understand. For some, maybe it's just a good refresher course on that. But nonetheless, I'll be sending out those links so that everybody has them and we can know and better understand what it is that we need to be doing. So again, April 5th, 3 p.m., we should have the hearing set. If things go well, Mr. Chairman, I'll be asking for your signature for the civil certification, which is all we require, and I'll be uploading straight to HUD immediately that afternoon, and we would fulfill our requirements on the PHA plan. Phoenix office is aware of what we're doing as well.
Okay.
Mr. Thompson,
Ms. Mon, quick one.
I know that in the last administration, the council and the mayor had to take the certification with HUD. So is that still valid, or do we have to do it?
It's absolutely valid. It's absolutely valid. There are some slight changes. Perhaps it wouldn't affect maybe yourself since you're well-versed in the housing world. But if you want to look into it, it's not a mandated thing. We just can't afford to go to the conference. They're in DC this year, imagine that. So it's just don't have the revenue stream for that. So online is what we got to do.
Commissioner Montiel?
I have a couple of questions. On the April 5th, there's a public hearing. Is that before the council meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So my other, I remember getting a concern from Marta Duran. Has that been cleared?
That's what we're talking about right now.
Well, I know that, but has that been cleared?
Yes. So the end date for this, again, will be April 5th. That's when the PHA plan goes through its formal hearing. The time now is set for people of the community to review and offer input. And we've created, we have an email address, phone numbers, and everything where the community can respond to that. In fact, I had one person from the community call me up and say, "Ven por café. We got to talk." I said, "Great." And that person,
Okay, I have
Dr.
another
Varona.
question. I have another question. Good. Yeah, he's always on top of things. I have another question. Give me an example of why it's not aligned. You said earlier, you didn't use the word align, but you said that you needed to make some changes. But yet in your same conversation, you said that much has not changed. Can you clarify your statements, please?
So there's been, the plan that was submitted in 2020 generalizes a lot of the milestones that we have accomplished. There were goals out there saying we want to remodernize. So I think it's pertinent that we put the amount of numbers or the amount of units that have been remodeled or remodernized for that factor. The general plan in the city and our PHA plan need to kind of talk the same language. And there's a little bit of bumps here and there, but I understand that. So the PHA plan has to kind of, go in lines with the general plan, and that's what I'm looking at. This morning, I was trying to review or at least download a copy of the city's general plan. I just couldn't. I'm going to have IT just send me a full-blown PDF if possible, because I know it's uploaded on the website. But it's just my opinion that we need to focus on what's happening today going forward than trying to figure out what went wrong yesterday, the year before that, and that, because we know what went wrong. So let's fix everything from this point on. And that's just my feeling behind everything.
So is this just being used as an excuse because things were not done? You've been there for a while already.
A year and a half, ma'am.
Yeah, year and a half.
And
That's
the
a long
plan was
time.
submitted in 2020.
Okay, yeah, but so now you're going to change the plan so that you can follow the general plan so that they could be aligned to the general plan? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm
Like
saying
you're
is,
can you just get to the point?
okay. So what I'm trying to say is I have a tool, the general plan, that has an overall idea what the city of Nogales is offering when it comes down to housing. I think that the PHA plan, the Housing Authority's plan, needs to be in line with that as well. There shouldn't be any contradictions, and I haven't found any. I just wanted to be a little bit more.
That was my next question. What is contradicting?
I haven't found any contradictions.
So why are you saying it has to be aligned if you haven't seen
Because
that something contradicts with one plan to another?
Right. I believe, at least it's in my opinion, that we could do a little bit better. We've been rubber stamping this PHA plan since 2016.
But you've been here for a year and a half, so you've been rubber stamping it also?
I'm sorry?
You've been also rubber stamping, as you say?
So
For a year and a half?
It happened in 2022. You're
I realize that,
absolutely
but you've been there for a year and a half.
right. So it happened in 2022. You're absolutely right. However, in 2023, when we opened up this little Pandora's box to see what we should modify and correct, I'm taking advantage of saying, hey, we got this opportunity to correct some things. Let's seize that opportunity. However, because we need a current PHA plan for the annual, for the year, we have to rubber stamp it, because to create the 5 year is not going to be something that's going to take us a day or two. It's going to take us months to create. And I think in all fairness for everybody, especially our residents, we really need to come into the times and say, okay, there's a lot of unknowns that we know can happen. Let's figure out a way to address those if they do happen.
And that's one of my concerns is the residents. This is all about the residents.
Yes.
having to go back, if you will, like you say. I asked you specifically what are some examples, and you say you haven't really given me much. I know times have changed and things happen, and it's a working document. That's why it's a 5-year plan, because it is a working document. But you're saying that you're going to start all over again.
Yes.
So that it could be aligned. Do you think that's the right word, aligned to the general plan that the voters voted on?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So do you think the city, are you also aligning it to the city, not only the general plan, but the city goals, the council mayor goals?
So I'm trying to align it to that as well.
Okay,
What the end result holds, we don't know yet. Hopefully it reaches a lot of those goals that the city has said. We want to do this when it comes down to housing and fair housing issues. But yeah, the goal is to get something tangible that we can work on.
but we have something tangible now,
We do.
right?
We absolutely do.
Just, we don't want to give that impression to the residents that we haven't had something tangible to work with, or that you're just winging it.
No. We have had
You have
something.
something.
We do have something tangible. I just think that it merits some good attention.
Yeah.
And we should.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to give it some
Yeah,
attention.
things have, of course, and that's why I'm raising this issue. Times are difficult right now. There's a homeless issue, and I'm glad the school district and is collaborating with other agencies to address this issue. It didn't seem like it was an issue before, but now we're seeing it, not just around the country, but here in Santa Cruz County. I hope that in your plan, you do address that issue too. But I want to make sure that I don't leave today that we send the message to the residents that, for the last year and a half, we haven't really followed the plan that was in place anyways, because that's why we have plans in place, to make sure that we follow them accordingly. But what you're saying today is that you're going to start creating a 5-year plan.
Correct.
Okay, that's aligned to
Right.
the general plan.
Right.
Okay, so can you make sure that you send that plan to council
Absolutely.
tomorrow?
The 5-year?
No, the one that
The
you...
current one?
the current
Absolutely.
one.
I will
Yeah, of
send that
course.
on an email.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bojorquez?
Robert, back in January, we got a memo from HUD saying that we hadn't turned in our civil rights certification. That one's due 75 days before the plan, right?
Absolutely.
So is there a reason we haven't turned in the one for 2022?
So it goes around the same conversation. We hadn't submitted an actual PHA plan, which we should have, and I understand that, and we were delinquent on that. However, the 45-day process has to occur, and that's in public hearings. It lapses on the 5th of April, and on that day, we should have met, or we will meet, the timeframes.
Yes.
And we should be able to get that signature at the conclusion of that meeting.
But this certification is due 75 days before the annual plan. It's due January 16th.
But that's for the 2023 plan.
Yes.
Yes.
But she's saying that fiscal year 2022 civil rights certification was due on the 16th of January.
So we need to go back, Vice Mayor, and double check those dates and everything. I know I've had a lot of discussion about which plans are missing, what hasn't. Just in Epic is a database that we use at the Housing Authority. There's been a revision on the plans 4 times. And I wonder which one of those is the plan that we're holding on to. So that's what I'm saying. If we create something new and if we process that, there is no guessing on if it's the 2019 revision, the 2020 revision, the 2021 revision. We got something. But yes, we were late on the 2022 submission. That's something that I'm working on to get addressed.
Okay.
One more question.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Commissioner Montiel.
Thank you. And one other question I have. Could you set up a meeting with Marta Duran? that maybe she could come to the next meeting?
I know she made an inference that she would be coming down in March, Mr. Dickey. I can certainly ask her. It'll probably be telephonic or online.
Yeah. In fact, I will direct that to Mr. Dickey. Could you set up a meeting with Marta Duran? Is it Duran or Duran?
Duran.
Okay, sorry.
To come to the next housing meeting?
Excuse me?
To have her come to the next housing?
Yeah, or
Sure.
at her earliest convenience.
We can invite her. And if she can't come to the next one, we'll see how soon she can come. And maybe it's a meeting at one of the council meetings. But it'd probably be better to come to this
Yeah.
meeting while you're commissioner.
Mr. Dickey, I have one question for you. Are you aware when things are delinquent? Are you aware that what Mr. Bojorquez just mentioned earlier, were you on top of this?
Well, we get the same emails.
Yeah, are you-
You guys get, and
so
then
are
I
you on
go
top of
talk
it?
to Robert, and then we call Marta and try to figure out where we're at and what we need to do.
Okay, so
yes.
you are on top of it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Quick follow-up, and I don't know if you can answer this for
Really?
Mr. Dickey. Has the housing reporting ever been delinquent in the past before?
Unfortunately, yes. The comment from Ms. Duran was, "Hi, Roberto, the housing authority is always late." And I go, "I'm trying to change that, Miss, Marta." But it has been, I mean, I can go back. I think the furthest I can go back is up to '09 and double check those dates. However, it's in the past.
But this is nothing new that's just come up. It's something that we always seem to work through,
Yes.
if I got this correct. And from what I gather, developing a new plan and still working off of the old plan, you can only beat a dead horse over and over so many times. Let's fix what we got going on that's wrong and we know it's wrong and move forward unless you guys feel there's something wrong with that.
And council member, commissioner, that is exactly what we're trying to do. We did have some good discussions regarding this, and even with the mayor a little bit. We brought him in, but we've talked to Marta, and I think it'd be good to have her come down and maybe go over kind of and ask her the questions and stuff too. But we're trying to get a hold, get on this. So in the future going forward, hopefully we don't get those emails.
Make a comment. All these, plans, certifications. There's got to be an agenda or due date, so we don't have this issues come about after the fact. We gotta be more precise on when each plan is due, when each certification is due, and if there's anything else that's due. I'm trying to do it within the city also, but the housing, it's got to, you probably have when every rent is due, what apartment owes rent, what date, and all that. Same thing should be on these processes. When do we have to turn in X report? When do we have to turn, Y report? But I think we have got to have it in writing and follow up on these. That way we don't fall into these situations again and again. It's kind of embarrassing to say, yeah, we're always falling into these predicaments and being sanctioned, which I don't think it's good for the city of Nogales. And, the more sanctions we get, the harder it is to get support.
So you're 100% correct there, Mayor, Mr. Chairman. I've just researched, I researched the 2023 calendar of goals, or exactly what you're identifying there. Hasn't been published, and we're in March already. So the most current publication is dated 2020. So even then, dates are a little bit off, but it's a good roadmap to know when things need to be submitted. So yes, I've taken the liberty of downloading that, and I've had that. So I was able to find, but again, it's a 2020. It may not be an excuse, but nonetheless, the 2023 timeframes have not been published yet. But you're absolutely right.
Okay. Anybody else on, what about update on the 5-year capital fund program plan? That
So the 5-year capital fund program goes with the 5-year plan as we analyze what direction the housing authority needs to go. In order for us to fulfill requirements, either through assessments of the property or REAC assessments, REAC is the inspection done by HUD of the sites, we need to devise a plan where we address those issues. So the CFP plan, Capital Fund Program Plan, it's kind of tricky. I'm going to ask everybody to forget what we know of how the city budget works and entertain my discussion here really quick. If we set aside X amount of dollars, we'll just say $10,000 for sidewalks, $10,000 for paint, and $10,000 for landscaping. And we'll call that the budget in funds or in capital. We call those grants on our world, so I'll just call them funds. However, the REAC inspection or a needs analysis of the properties comes back that we have an issue with fencing, and we have not addressed fencing in the CFP plan. The question comes up, how do we address it without funding? Okay? We can modify the plan through a significant amendment. However, if we're short, where do I get the money from? So the 5-year CFP plan also deserves, for the sake of the residents, deserves a do-over. For us to be able to look into the future and say, we need to address these deficiencies, and we need to address them now. How do we address those deficiencies? How do we obligate that money, and how do we spend down on those monies? But they got to exist, right? So budget items have to exist in order for us. Hello? No, there it is. Sorry. How do they exist? How do we get the funding for it? So again, this is no different than the PHA plan. There are some deficiencies in the CFP plan that I think we need to address. We spent a good 10 hours on this already, and a draft has been submitted for 23 to 28, 27, 23 and 4 and 5 and 6, 27. That's still in review. Why? Because it also needs the attention to be able to fulfill these needs. And our capital fund allowance, for lack of a better term, does not exceed $580,000 a year. So with $580,000 a year, we have to decide what's crucial, what's important, and what's a want. We're currently analyzing the deficiencies that have been addressed over and over, or been identified over and over and over. We believe we have a good, solid plan to move forward for funding to be able to address those. I think the first go around in the future would be to eliminate the deficiencies. The year after that would be to reinstall those deficiencies. In other words, if we have issues with fencing, it's probably best to knock them down, go through the cycle, or if we have funding obligated, start reinstalling brand new fencing. So it's a trickle effect to get to the end. And I am a firm believer that once we get to that 5-year cap, year 6, 7, 8, 9, or 1, 2, 3 of the following plan should be in line for us to maintain, no longer install, right? We failed to maintain some of these site issues. We thought everything was going to last forever, and it doesn't. I mean, there's wear and tear on everything. So the CFP plan also deserves some attention, and we're working on that as well to do that. HUD reallocated some funding for 23 in the tune of 125,000. So now we get to reopen up the CFP plan for 2023 and say, where can we place this money into? It's good money, it's incredible money, but it's not enough to fix a fencing deficiency. We need 5 times, 6 times as much to do so. So I think we're going to use this money for rehab the exterior of the properties and start painting those. That seems to be the quick go-to because it's something that we really need to do. So
Anybody have any questions on the capital funding? Okay, how are we next, item 3, update on 2023-2024 NHA budget.
our accountants received our draft budget where we applied certain funding or requested certain funding to perform certain duties that I believe we have to be doing. One of the things that had been omitted from the prior budget was a turnaround funds to be able to contract a company and get these turns around done within a couple weeks and eliminate the potential of staff being burdened with it because they do have other duties that they need to fulfill, such as emergency work orders, which those are constantly every day. That's a change in that. I've asked for a little bit more funding for some contractual stuff. It's just the budget grew. And this budget is for our everyday turn on the lights, pay the bills type of services. It's not to address what we have been addressing in the CFP plan or what we intend to address in the CFP plan. So this morning I reached out to our accounting team. I didn't get an answer as to when we should get that. However, we need to get a budget in place no later than April 1st. So if I get something before the next the second council meeting, I will ask Mr. Dickey to see if the mayor is kind enough to entertain a budget agenda item, and we can get that resolution done and be able to start drawing those funds April 1st, as our fiscal year starts April 1st.
Commissioner Bojorquez.
Robert, have you been working with the city finance in regards to the salaries of the housing authority employees?
Yes. In fact, those are due March 10th.
But so we won't have any surprises because I know that the budget for the housing authority is due April 1st. Come out, and then the budget for the city is July 1st.
Right.
So there's a difference of 3 months there. And sometimes we get surprises, we approve something on the housing authority budget and then we go to the city budget and hey, what is this?
I think the best question that I can ask of all of you guys on your council hat is, am I to anticipate any changes in salary for staff? That's one question. And I know we can't really answer that right now because we don't know what numbers we'll have come March, April, May, June. So the best I can do is apply for a revision of the budget or a modification in December. Why December? Because we typically wait for the last quarter of the fiscal year to make those adjustments through HUD. We've had a vacancy that's gone unfilled intentionally to address the shortfalls in salary adjustments that took effect July of last year. So intentionally we did that and that absorbed any shortfalls we had on that. However, that's probably not going to be the plan this year as I need staff to go back in there and work through the changes that we're proposing. So again, without direction, either from council, the city manager's office, to anticipate a raise in staff, I just can't. I can't ask for it if it's not going to happen. That's what I'm trying to get to. But there's always, as you know, Councilman or Vice Mayor Bojorquez, HUD is lenient when there's those changes. However, we just got to wait till the last quarter to be able to apply for those changes.
Commissioner Montiel.
Mr. Dickey, excuse me. Yeah. Oh, are you doing? Oh, are you done? Okay, Mr. Dickey, in the event that this happens, would those salaries be retroactive? Is that the right word, retroactive? I don't know.
Yes.
That's a legal issue.
Retroactive
question.
is the
Chantel's
correct
not here.
word. Retroactive is the correct word.
So tell me how that would work if we were to, pay those salaries at a higher rate
For housing.
Uh-huh.
If we were to so I've never been in this situation with housing, but my thoughts are if they were to be getting a raise per housing authority, I don't know if it's just a recommendation, this is where they need to be, and we can just put them in with our plan, and what we're doing, and then that would take care of them and where they're supposed to be. Then they'd get the raises July, and it wouldn't be retroactive.
Well, I'm sure there's some, I'm sure.
I'd have to have a little more time to see
that. But I just don't want the employees at the housing to lose out if we do make those changes to their salary.
If they're supposed to have changes, we'll make sure that they're made.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
We'll
Thank you.
make sure we're on top of it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I had one question. You talked about maybe even contracting organization for the budget funding,
I'm sorry?
the accounting,
The accountants.
the accounting.
Oh, so, sorry,
Contracting somebody for
I'm trying to process.
working on the budget funding.
So we historically,
Is there funds to do that?
yes, so that's obligated in our administrative funds through HUD. This is standard across all PHAs. There's typically two. Now there's a third vendor that works with all housing authorities nationally. We opted to use one years ago, and it's been the same one ever since. They just changed their name recently. So this company does a lot of our accounting on the backside. They prepare and submit some of our reporting. Actually, we prepare the reporting, they submit. One of the things that we contract them out to do is make sure that our budget is healthy and ways to make it healthier. So yeah, it's part of what we pay them on a yearly basis. And the reason we do that is because our other internal database, our property management database, happens to be them. So it's a whole bundled up deal.
But if we have that access, why do we get behind on other reportings?
Because they do financials only. They don't do PHA submissions on plans.
Okay. Anybody else?
Are you still using Nancy?
They changed to MRI. Yes.
Okay. Shall we go to next item 4, NHS contracts awards for rehabilitation of dwellings or sites?
So as allowable in the procurement policy, either federal or city, we were able to award 2 contracts, or we'll be awarding 2 contracts shortly, hopefully by the end of the week. We had obligated $100,000 to paint 4 sites. $100,000 can't stretch that buck that far, which is again a reason why we need to really look at the CFP plan. We underbid ourselves. $100,000 may have worked in 19. It doesn't work in 23. So out of the 100,000, which should have painted 40 units, 50 units, we're only going to be able to paint 10. They're coming in at around $6,500 to $8,000 per unit. And it would be really disconcerting if I paint a partial portion of a section versus the whole thing. So we've identified as McNabb Drive, since it's 10 units, $6,500 each, $65,000 for the award to paint the entire site. The money that's left over, we will figure out what we can do, obligate it somewhere else or what have you. However, we would not be able to fulfill a whole 3-4 site paint on $100,000. Perhaps 4 years ago, maybe, but not right now. And that's the pattern that we're seeing with a lot of these obligations and awards that we got in our CFP plan, where we're just going to come out short. So we have to move money around, right? But it's got to be something that's been identified. And we did one last time. We moved some money around. So that's one of them. McNabb Drive will be going through a full makeover shortly. We have a bathroom remodel that we need to do desperately. That bathroom is a cause of mold in one of the units. So we need to tear it all up, reinstall good things. What happened was back in the 70s, we used cast iron tubs. However, within time, things wear and tear. So the subflooring has allowed leakage to spill down into the first floor, and that has created a mold infestation. And that's across the board. So again, that's something that we need to put money into in our CFP plan so we can do those bathroom remods and those bathroom fixes to avoid the mold. It's things that we just didn't see happening that we're seeing now. So that's why I'm saying we really got to put a lot of attention to these plans so we know where to go to with that. So those are just two of them that we're gonna do. These are small purchases. They do not require a resolution. However, if the commissioners would like to see a resolution, I can certainly do so in the next council meeting. And it'd be just a ratification of the decisions being made. But I mean, it's not necessary, but you know, it's totally up to the commission.
Any questions?
So you're not giving money back?
There's a potential that we may.
Why can't you just use it?
For something else?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, the CFP plan doesn't work that way. So if there's these three items.
But
right
can
here-
you, no, I know about the budget changes and stuff like that. When it's designated monies, you need to use them where you asked it initially for. But I'm sure maybe if you work, can you talk to Mrs. Duron how these monies could, I would hate to send back these monies. You just noted that there are some deficiencies, mold. I mean, so is there any way you can have a conversation with Mrs. Duron? I can ask her myself when she comes on her next trip, and sit down with her and Mr. Dickey and see how we could, designate or redesignate these funds. I know there's rules and requirements, like any federal funds are. They're very restricted. But if you could please, get back with me about if you did return those funds, and if you didn't, if something else worked out. How much is it?
Well, that so on the painting project, it would have been $35,000.
Total 35,000?
Total 35,000. And of course, there's loose ends here where
yeah.
it was a $9,000 job. We had 10, stuff like that. I've seen that in the past. We've had those monies reobligated back to us and say, hey, do a quick turnaround. And we anticipate that to happen. And I do agree on what you're saying. I would hate to see that money go back. However, if we're going to do something partially, that's also a violation of the use of the funds.
Well, I'm not assuming to break any federal rules or anything, but I'm just asking to look into that.
Definitely.
I'm sure they know exactly how we can redirect if that's a possibility to do. Just would hate for these monies to go back when there's such a need at the housing
Definitely.
authority.
In one other conference that I attended, is there any way get business support, like Home Depot support and stuff like that on any refurbishing of apartments, painting, with materials or anything? I recall Home Depot was very supportive on housing. Nationwide, why not locally?
Definitely. Let me look into that. I'm not too sure if we would qualify for X, Y, or Z reasons, but let me look into that and report back. It's a great idea. One thing that I'm really interested with Home Depot is a neighborhood cleanup, and if I can get all the tools to do so and empower the residents to do a little bit more for themselves, that's something that we've been looking at as well. I just don't have a straight answer, but that's a good idea for me to look into.
Yeah, because I recall, I'll check my thousand of cards, but I know that I've got a person's name there at, they started talking about, supporting the communities and they've done it before. They do it for other cities, Not sure why Nogales wouldn't participate.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes, sir. Mr. Gradius.
need clarification. Earlier, we've been talking about community. I just need clarification by community. We're talking about the whole city of Nogales or just the housing community for your meetings and everything else we've been talking about?
Residents. Housing
Just the
residents.
residents, okay.
Housing residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on item 4? Go to the next item, training in South Tucson housing authorities. Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Chairman, South Tucson came down on Thursday, to get some needed training on the Lindsay software Mr. Bojorquez, or Vice Mayor Bojorquez was talking about. We had lengthy discussions. We showed him a couple of our remods. They took some ideas back home. We were able to show him how to work the work order module in the software, in the database. So they left really happy. In the discussions that I spoke to them, they're facing the same things we are: lack of housing, funding issues, contractors not willing to work, contractors overbidding, lack of funding, underestimating. So it seems to be standard across the board, at least for Southern Arizona. But I'm just pleased to say that South Tucson reached out to Nogales and said, hey, we know you guys have a working work order module that tracks everything. Can we get some training? We spent a good 3 hours on all this, and they left happy. In fact, this morning they asked for some spreadsheets from us so they can track their inventory of appliances. So I sent that out to them. So they're incorporating a lot of our tricks and tools into their own operations. So it's a pretty cool little thing to talk about there.
Yeah, at least they know we're doing something right.
Yeah, yeah. And coincidentally, they just entered into a IGA with the actual city of Tucson. Because as we know, South Tucson is only 5 miles, right? 5 square miles. They were able to branch out into the entire city of Tucson for Section 8 vouchers. So it took them a while. Tucson accepted, and that's because Tucson's facing the same thing. So now Tucson needs to branch out, and so forth, so forth. A good thing is we got the whole county, but still, there's not enough to go around.
Just one more comment on housing, and this probably goes in general. Do we collaborate anything with the county?
With who, I'm sorry?
County?
So county government doesn't have much with the housing authority, but we do, work in Rio Rico and stuff like that. I think the last time we had the county at a discussion was when US ICH was here, early February or January, I'm sorry. And I remember asking the counties like, hey, I hate to put them on the spot, but if the idea of the shipping container homes were to come into fruition, we would really have to nudge the county to do things for us in waivers. So,
Have you talked that idea with Martha at all?
have I?
The shipping containers?
No, I haven't. I didn't get his information though, but I've been doing my own research. I think our biggest obstacle is going to be zoning rules. That's about it. Everything else, we should be good. Even the funding for that can be identified.
Well, let's look into it.
Well, today I got a call from one of the local, I forget the church, up over by Mariposa Ranch Road. They have 4 acres of property they want to donate to the city. And somebody said, we can do 30 elderly 1-bedroom units. And I said, great, let's figure it out. And that's when the conversation stops because they think I can open the checkbook and say, hey, it's $2 million, go build. I wish. I mean, if we want to reobligate ARPA funds, hey, I'm all for that.
Okay, yeah, but we gotta look into whatever resources or ideas we could come about for housing, it is, obviously we see the numbers where we're very short on, or very long on needs. So it's something I think we gotta look into and but main thing is we gotta make sure they're auto-funded, that we can sustain them.
Right.
And I dig a hole for ourselves. Any other comments, commissioners? No? With that, we go to item 6, future agenda items. Anybody? Go ahead, Miss
The last time I went,
Commissioner Montero.
thank you. The last time I went to the housing to do a visit, Mr. Dickey was with me. You noted that there was going to be a mural done. What can you give me an update on that?
So in order to do the
It's
mural,
about a year ago, right?
yeah, in order to do the mural, we would have to repaint the entire section that we want to put the mural on. I would like to see a mural right outside the office coming down on Kitchen Street. That seems to be the hub of the Housing Authority. However, that money to paint that section isn't earmarked until this coming cycle. So it's only $90,000.
Well,
I'll throw that out there.
At that time, you said it was a go. I remember really just clearly you said, there's going to be a mural here.
Right.
So some things, again, have changed. Yeah.
They have changed because, again, in order to paint the mural,
Yeah, I get
need
that,
to
yeah.
paint the building, and there's just
But you didn't
not
know that
enough.
before.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
enough to go around.
You didn't know that before, though, before you
No,
said
we
that.
hadn't. I
Oh,
hadn't
okay.
dived
So
into
things
the
have-
CFP plan to analyze it and
Yeah,
project what today has.
yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Commissioner Bojorquez.
Mr. Thompson, when was the last time that we had an audit for the Housing Authority?
It's undergoing right now. There's two things that are pending. One, I spoke to Mr. Machado briefly about it, the Declaration of Trust. It's an issue that came up, or a PIH notice, a request that came out back in '09. The information I have stored or I have on file is something that the auditors are saying that's not what we need. So I need to really sit down with that and find out exactly what there is, because I can say this, every housing authority is built differently. Every housing authority has different ways of doing things, right, as long as it's authorized. And the Declaration of Trust, we see it as a valid document saying, HUD, you do have a vested interest in this program, but facilities do belong to, or the sites do belong to the city. It just looks funny, therefore it's funny. And that's where we're at with that. We're just trying to fix that.
And this will be for 2022, right?
22, correct.
Okay, so I will put it on the agenda until it's done.
And I'll bring it in as soon as I get it.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Dickey.
Yes, Mr. Thompson. Are the audits done every year, annually,
Yes.
for the Housing Authority? Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else?
I have Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
like,
Mr. Ron.
I would like for future agenda item, for discussion, at least how to start developing a program on how many years these families can be there. I think the biggest problem that we're having right now with that list that the chairman discussed right now is that it comes down to fairness also. I believe that there's need with everyone else, but we gotta find a halfway point, the list is not moving at all. I think we need to find a way to wean off these families and have them, move forward and help these other families that are struggling, because that from what I discuss with the city manager and with you is that list doesn't really move much. So we got to do that. I understand that we don't have a lot of empty apartments but with that said, I think that, you just told me that we have 3-generation, families. At the same time, I understand that there's people with needs, but there's other people with needs too. And I think we need to equalize the application process. And so if we can sort of come up with a game plan for discussion, nothing, just see what we can do.
Definitely. So if I can just elaborate a little bit on that. So there's 2 application processes currently observed by HUD. One is first come, first serve, which we are not. The other one is based on points, which is what we do. So disabilities, carrier points, work where you live. I'm trying to think what the other ones are. Veteran status, a couple of protected statuses carry points. So the consensus has been to go to first come, first serve. However, we do have a waiting list. We have to exhaust that first, which is the biggest challenge before we migrate to the first come, first serve.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? Administration? Nope. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. With that said, move to adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.